This video clip has been brought to you by GreenerIT.ca, embracing technology for a sustainable future. GreenerIT.ca looks at the ESRI Rooftop Garden in downtown Toronto. ESRI Canada specializes in GIS systems.
Maybe you can walk us through what the considerations were when you were putting together the plan for the garden.
We went through a long process with ESRI and their Alex put a nice group together of people from all over the staff, and we had a lot of meetings on the design and what it could be and what it could not be, maybe potentially as well. There's certainly issues when you're doing a garden on a roof as opposed to on the ground. So really, this garden really came out of those meetings, and there was a lot of interest, and obviously right from the president, but also throughout the staff as well. I found this very enjoyable to work. So and these gardens that face the two meeting rooms are slightly different and have a slightly different character. One of the things that's interesting about this garden and what ESRI does is it's built with modules. And I thought right from the beginning, my rudimentary knowledge of GIS systems are that it's a series of small little modules that have a lot of information. So when we were laying this out, we were thinking about that and how it relates to what we're doing. So each one of these was planted as a 1 foot by 2 foot module. And then we introduced different things that would happen in this. A lot of the garden too, the design had to incorporate how the functional qualities of these things work. So sometimes you'll see this one in here, and you'll see this opening. It's not, there's a reason for that, because we have to have a line that can run right through here. And so window washing, and that's why we have this river stone edge along here to sort of discourage people from walking in there. Shade is a challenge that we had. As I said, one of the issues, we could have planted shade trees in these planters. We have a lot of soil here, 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot in these planters. I think these things weigh about 5,000 pounds each. But once again, one of the ideas was the winter character. We don't have foliage on a lot of plants for almost 6 months of the year, so that was something kind of the steering committee felt that was really important, so that's why we use these conifers. The interesting thing too is you can see them from below, and whenever I drive up the Don Valley, I always like to see that, yeah, there's the garden. So it's a way of almost bringing the garden down to, the city as well. And these people in these buildings, some people have come up to me and said, wow, I just love looking down on that garden now, because before it was a gray terrace, now it's this garden that changes throughout the seasons.
Now, did you have to do much in terms of building retrofit to accommodate the green garden?
Well, I think fortunate is the right word. The roof had to be re-waterproofed at the time, so the building owner did all of that, and so that was all done. So we have brand new waterproofing. Two things that are most important on a green roof are, one, making sure that the building doesn't leak. That's very important. And number two, after you've taken that, that's relatively easy to do. You want to make sure the plants are surviving, because you don't have a ground roof. And that's what this is here. We've got the system that is designed to keep these plants alive and the right plants for the location.
The total cost of this project was around about $200,000. The city helped you with a $35,000 grant.
Yes.
And how many square feet do we have here?
The deck is about 8,000 square feet. So the green part is covering about 60% of that.
And the reduction that you think in temperature as a result of the green roof would be?
The studies that Ryerson have shown, I've seen two studies, they were very conservative. They said if 5% of the roofs were green, it'd be a 0.5 degree Celsius drop. But I've also seen up to a degree Celsius drop for 5% green. The urban heat island is largely caused by a lot of roofs that are black. So you get the black tar, so you get the black asphalt. So painting them white would also help. But the green also has the added benefit of the stormwater retention, and it's not just the reflectance of the lighter colored plants. It's the transpiration of the moisture.
green roofs are really nothing. They're not a new thing. They've been around in Toronto for a long time. It's just that this kind of roof is known as an extensive roof, which is very shallow growing mediums. But we have green roofs that are on top of parking garages. We have roof gardens that have huge trees. You can think of projects down on the waterfront. The Queen's Quay Terminal Warehouse, I think that's about 25 years old, that project. And there's huge trees growing in there on the roof. So we've had them for a long time, but what we're seeing is the opportunity where we don't have the ability to have a lot of weight, and we don't in this area, that we can use very thin growing mediums and use types of plants that can grow in those areas, and then we can still get a green coverage. Yeah, these grasses here, the Calarias, the Deschampsia, which are these ones here, and the panicums, which are the grasses back here, are all indigenous plants of the. They're really tall grass prairie plants and some of that prairie actually extends right into southern Ontario, into Toronto. So these are all some local plants as well. The serviceberry that Alex mentioned. One of the things that we did here too is we always started from low plants to taller, so that when you're inside the offices, then your sightline would see the taller grasses and the taller plants behind, and you would see less of the grasses in the foreground. So,
will you have to fertilize in order to maintain the plant's health?
well, the interesting thing on a green roof where you have very thin soil is that the nutrients will get used up. And we don't have a lot of trees that are falling around and adding leaves that will break down and add more nutrients to the soil over time. We also don't have a parent material underneath that is weathering and giving off some nutrients as well. So yes, over time, nutrients will have to be re-added. What's happening with this garden, which is interesting, is the contractor who's maintaining it is going to be using what's called a compost tea. And there's a lot of interest in these compost teas these days. The City of Toronto uses them for watering their trees down on the ground. And what it is basically boiling up, some organic matter, leaf mold, things like that, and it creates this material, liquid material that can be used to add fertility, but not by using fertilizers that are manufactured or come from chemical processes that are created by taking things out of the ground. This is really reusing material, and there's a lot of interest in compost tea. So that's how the nutrients will be re-added to the soil over the years here.
When you do the design and the development, Scott, are there some kind of documents that you can reference for standards? I'm thinking about some of the buildings certification for green and whether or not green roofs actually are part of that now here in Canada or
LEED.
I was thinking about the LEED standard particularly.
There are a number of standards that we've been using up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
But the really amazing thing about the City of Toronto is that they've introduced a green roof bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming in January 2010. So any building permit made after that date has to have a green roof if the building is of a certain type and a certain size. There's very few exemptions, over 2,000 square meters. So, and the City of Toronto has come up with some standards that will guide all green roofs. So to deal with loading, wind loading, fire resistance, stormwater management, types of plants to use, things like that. So I think that's a very good thing that the city has done, because they've taken this information that came from a lot of different standards. Alex mentioned LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and those standards, and then there's some other standards. The most famous green roof standard comes from Germany, where they've been doing green roofs a lot longer than us, and which is called the FLL, and that standard kind of set the basis for what we're doing over here.